With this tiny little radio, I talked from Canada, Nova Scotia, Canada, all the way to Idaho without interruption or disruption, and I continued that conversation for quite a while. This is the POCLINK Ultra-1, and I wanted to talk to you about how it might work for your church security team, your prepper team, what have you. There's a lot to talk about in this tiny little radio. There's some pros and there are some cons. We're going to go over it all together to see if this might meet your needs. All right, there was no hyperbole with this. I literally was in Nova Scotia, Canada, talking to somebody in Idaho with this, no problem. In fact, I was talking to K6 UDA, who's also a YouTuber and a retired California cop, just like me, in Idaho, while I was in Indiana, and we're able to talk without a hitch. It's funny. I'm looking at this, and it's got full bars on the cell network because it hops those different cell networks. And on my personal phone, I've got 2 bars. So I barely have reception here, but I got perfect reception on the radio.
Yeah, isn't that something? I kind of got the same thing. I got 1 or 2 bars normally here in the house on the cell phone, and this thing 3 or 4 bars.
No, I've tested everything. I've tested Motorola. I've tested Baofeng, TYT. I've used it on digital networks. I've talked on analog networks. Now, we're not talking about end-of-the-world communications. We're talking about everyday communications for a church security team. And I've been testing this for about a month. It's worked pretty well for me. There are some cons, though, that we're going to talk about, but I think this is going to work well for you. Now, I reached out to POCLINK. It's kind of like, you guys have probably all heard of rapid radios. It's similar but different. And I reached out to POCLINK because my friends over at Survival Dispatch Network, they had been using this and they found that it worked really well for them. When we talked about it, I thought this might work for you. So I called them up. They sent it to me. That's my relationship with POCLINK. So I don't owe them anything. I don't owe them a positive review or anything. They have no idea what my review is going to be. Now, I wanted to approach this like I do with any piece of gear that I test. I wanted to know what it could handle in real environments, not just what the product page claims. Now, I've been using this for a little over a month now, and I've pushed it in places where most radios struggle. And I'll tell you where it really came down besides state to state and country to country communication. But just in my church building, which is made of cinderblock and it's multi-story, during active shooter training, while people are running around and gunfire is going off all around, I tested this out and it performed flawlessly for me. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to work flawlessly for you, but I'm going to walk you through what the Ultra-1 does well, where it falls short, and what churches need to understand before investing in a system like this, which when I say invest in a system, it's not that expensive. Now, the Ultra-1 is built around a simple idea, and it's to give users a way to communicate over long distances when cell networks are available and keep them connected locally when they are not. Now, it combines 2 systems in one unit, which is what makes it different from the typical radios that most churches buy, or even something like rapid radios. Now, the first system is the cellular side. Now, the Ultra-1 uses standard LTE or 4G networks, the same networks our phones rely on, but it handles the signal a little bit differently. It can search for and use more than one carrier rather than staying locked on to a single provider. Now, that is why it often shows more signal strength than a normal phone in the same location. So as an example here, my phone usually has 1 bar. In fact, let me look right now. I have a whopping 2 bars right now, while the POCLINK has full bars. Now, when LTE is available, the radios can talk across states or even internationally without any delay or special equipment. And it's more, I know I said I talked from Canada. I wish I had these in time. I went to the UK about 2 months ago, and I wish I had the radios in time. They were actually in transit while I was going to the UK, because supposedly you can be in the UK and talk to some of the United States and not pay an extra fee. It's just part of everything that you have for this. So I didn't get to check that out, but it did work, Nova Scotia to Idaho. So that's the first system. Now, the second system is FRS, Family Radios System. Now, these are the same unlicensed frequencies used by common walkie-talkies. Now, if you're in a dead zone or deep inside a building where cell service drops, the radio can still function as a conventional two-way radio. Now, FRS doesn't depend on towers, so even in the worst case scenario, your team can still talk one-on-one. Now, I do look at communications as a layered approach. I actually use this right now day to day where I need to use radios for quick communication, like our active shooter training. I want secure communication. I want encrypted communication. I want other people to listen to me. And there's actually an extra bonus with this that we'll talk about, where you can use your cell phone to communicate in addition to this. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but I use it for stuff like that. It works really, really well. I'm on the range and I want to talk to other people on the range. But if you wanted to work it for church security, it would work just as well, right? But for my end of the world comms, I'm not going to go in deep onto this channel, my end of the world comms, like the government's failed or there was a major earthquake, a volcano, whatever. Even an EMP, I've got comms for that too that are stored away. This is my first everyday layer though. Now, the nice thing about this is it makes it practical for churches because it's flexible. It gives you long range capability when the environment supports it and dependable short range communication when it does not. As an example, you have a youth camp that could be in another state. And instead of picking up your phone and calling and trying to get through, your entire team can have this and your camp counselor can pick it up and talk to people at the church 300 miles away like you were in the same church talking at the same time. It's a pretty big deal for me. All right, so let's talk about the testing that I did because I'm just not going to blindly pick this without putting it through its paces. Now, to work on the cellular side, to make sure that works, I told you I was in Canada and talked to somebody here in Idaho. But the big test came when I talked to K6UDA, also here on YouTube, and also a fellow ham radio operator and a YouTuber. And when I was in Indiana, we had this exchange.
Keith, do you want to talk really quickly about what you see the POCLINK fitting into church security or any kind of MCOM?
I think it's a wonderful tool. Now, what people didn't see is you and I were talking when I was in Indiana, and you were in Idaho, and it was like you were standing next door to me.
Now, you guys heard where that dropped out on the radio, and hey, you're going to have dropouts. I think the app picked it up here.
I think it's a wonderful tool. Now, what people didn't see is you and I were talking when I was in Indiana, and you were here in Idaho, and it was like you were standing next door to me.
Yeah, hey, got you in there.
That's wonderful, man. So I'm in Lafayette, Indiana, and I'm talking to you in Idaho. It's a pretty cool system.
Yeah, I think where this is going to fit in is I think just as a regular security radio for you to communicate amongst your team. And the best part is it's recorded on an app on your phone, so if you miss something, you go back and listen to it. Or if you have a critical event, you actually have evidential recording on your phone that you can pull for law enforcement later for prosecution or what have you.
And guys, that is super powerful.
So we can establish that I'm in Indiana, he's in Idaho, and we can talk clearly, no problem. Now, the next test came when we had active shooter training. I couldn't wait for this day. I thought it was really good. Now, we're in a cinderblock building, multi-story. Now, our church radios, we have our own FCC frequency, and our radios do work well in our environment, but they don't work outside. Like if I went out to the street, I could not hear somebody inside the building, but I can with these. So being surrounded by cinder block, concrete, and steel, it didn't have a problem. Now, at one point, this did go down to 2 bars, and I still got out with no problem whatsoever. You can see here as we're running around, I was dealing with gunfire. I was dealing with people constantly calling my attention, different parts of the building, and without a problem, we were able to communicate. And what that told me was that if I had an active shooter at my church, which would be the worst case scenario, I was able to communicate with my people clearly, without delay, without a problem. Now, not every report has been positive. Now, I have a subscriber chat over at ChristianWarriorTraining.com. If you want to be a part of that subscriber chat, that is for our paid subscribers. There are people in there, and there's some great information flowing back and forth. And I put in there a couple of weeks ago that I was looking at the POCLINK radio, and I was just giving my initial observations of, I really like this. I came back from Indiana, and I was like, man, I was talking states away with this tiny little radio, and it is working pretty good. Well, it turns out one of the subscribers owns a communication shop, and they were looking at POCLINK to see if this was something viable for them to sell in their shop. So they ordered a couple. They did not have a positive experience. Now, they're in a more rural area, And when they were in that rural area, they had a hard time getting out. And that is something that I've heard a lot of times. If you check out fellow YouTuber K6UDA, he comments that he took this on a hunting trip out in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. In fact, he was on the Nevada-Idaho border, and there were no cell towers out there, and he had a hard time talking to his friend on another hilltop. That's not really what this was made for. And so, they were having some problems, and then they had an incident where they dropped it from, normal height, and when it fell to the ground, it broke open. Now, these are not hardy. They're not hardy like a Motorola is. Okay, so here's my Motorola that I use for, surprise, I'm a prepper. And this is part of my team's loadout. We have connected comms, and maybe one day I'll get that prepper channel going and we'll talk about my comms for tactical stuff. This is heavy, but this is rock solid. I carried a radio exactly like this for a very long time on SWAT. And it fell, it's been bumped, thrown, broken, or not necessarily broken, but dropped on the ground, and I've never broke it. This is not this, okay? This goes farther, and this goes multi-state. This does not. There are pros and cons, right? But it's not built like this. This is a brick, and this is like 10 times the weight. So different purposes, but this is, I want to say it's fragile, but what I found is they have great customer service. So POCLINK, I've been talking to them back and forth. My radios got lost in transit. They sent me out new ones right away. K6UDA, he had a suggestion to make these radios better, and they showed up in the Ultra-1s, which I thought was pretty cool. He also had some of the older ones. Do I have an older one? Oh, I'm actually holding an older one. I've been showing you the older one. This is the newer one. You can't really tell. It's software inside. But he took one of the older ones, shipped it off to them, and they turned it into one of the newer ones. So I thought that was pretty cool. Their customer service is pretty spot on. I'm not going to lie. So I would think if you broke it, that they would replace it. In fact, I'm sure they're going to monitor the comments here, so it would be nice for them to speak up in there. I don't really want to speak up for them. All right, so let's talk about the benefits for your security team. Most volunteers are not radio experts, so a radio that works without complicated setup is valuable. The Ultra-1 fits that need. I'm able to, here's the really cool part, okay? I can set up groups. And so I've created a group that is just my tactical comms. So test 1, 2, 3. It's encrypted, and it only goes to my group. Now, Bob over at K6UDA created an Idaho Emergency Communications group on these. I can call him up right now, and we can start talking. And so it gave me the idea. What if you're in a city and all your churches selected these radios? Or not all, but a lot of churches pick these radios. You could pick a group. You can make a group just for your church. And then you can make a group for your area-wide mutual aid. And you can just say church mutual aid. And that's a second group. And so when something happens, you can all go to that group, and you can only get in there if you're invited. And now you can communicate securely amongst each other, multiple churches. You can do the same thing for your city, for your county, for your state. I could make one. I think it wouldn't work out well, but I could literally make a Christian warrior group and have thousands of people in there, and we could all be talking. Now, I think it would be a mosh pit of just people chatting, and I think it would drive everybody crazy. But I think that's pretty cool. The other thing is, look, my radios are on here, okay? I can pull up the POCLINK app. In fact, let me record this. So I pulled up the POCLINK app, and now I'm going to talk on this using just this, and I'll put this up side by side or something, right? Testing 1, 2, 3. And so I could be sitting in church and give up this radio to somebody else. I can put an earbud inside my phone. And then if somebody talked and I missed it, I can just hit it and replay it.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
And I just replayed this. It keeps conversations, which I think is the coolest thing. So we'll go back to my training from the other day. And here's just a random transmission from back on November 9th when I had active shooter training.
Start exercise, start exercise, start exercise.
I can go back and listen to my entire exercise and listen to everything. To me, that's phenomenal, right? So you're now going to go in service, and you are protecting everybody during the prior service. You hand off your radio, the new person takes it. Now you have it on your cell phone, right? And you can keep that in your pocket, right? Or you decide, I don't want to carry a radio, and you have your cell phone hooked up to your hearing aids or an earbud. And while you're sitting in service, you can monitor radio traffic. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? Now, I think there's a limitation of like one radio is binded to one phone. I mean, that part I wish it was like multi-phone, kind of like Tango was another one that I recommended. I still recommend them. I still think they're very good. But I like the groups. I like the multiple groups, mutual aid, and I like being able to open up the app and go back and see some of the transmissions that I might have missed. I've noticed that there were some transmissions I missed when I was doing some hardcore testing where like we were running around and we were trying to overload the system by talking really quick. Active shooter over here, right? Like how people really would be. And I was like, I missed that. And I went back to the app and I pressed the button and it was shooters down. I don't know if you heard that. Shooters down. And now I know, all right, shooters down. I'm going to slow my roll a little bit. This app is phenomenal. I really like it. I'm going to put right next to me what I'm looking at here. You can see I've got my church one that's active right now. I've got Idaho Christian Warrior Training Group, and then I've got the Idaho MCOM Emergency Communications. I can keep adding. I can keep putting up stuff. So whatever you want to do. And I thought it would be kind of cool if we set up groups for all 50 states that were mutual aid, that were available. If something happened, we can all just like go, like if you're in Indiana and something happens, you could pop up on the Indiana and go, hey, Indianapolis, I heard you got hit. I'm available. If you guys need me, I'm in the area. And if they need help, you go over there. And I think that would be kind of cool, right? It's not the best system that ever walked the earth. Everything has pros and cons. And this has cons, but it's got a lot of pros that are pretty cool for what we do. You have a list of all your devices. You can add a device, right? Through Bluetooth or scanning it when you first get it. You got your groups. Here's the other thing. You got your location. I got to be careful about showing my location here. But if I can, but let's say I have my device updating every minute. So let's say I'm in the parking lot. All of a sudden I go out on the radio and I go, help, parking lot 1. And you're like, what did he just say? Because I've got all these radios around me and you couldn't hear it. You can go back and replay it. Help, but you couldn't hear parking lot 1. You can pull up the location data and see where that person is. And I've noticed that it has mixed results. Tangos works really good. This one, if you don't have it set to every minute, it's not that great. But I've noticed it works fairly well, that I get an idea of where somebody is in a general direction and I can try to find them. So think kind of like if you have an Apple iPhone and locate my iPhone or something like that. It works pretty dang good. I know my iPhone will show me the room that I'm in within my house. So it's easy for people to use. Programming, you got to get used to it. Read the manual, follow along. You'll figure it out. It's got that strong battery life. It lasts for quite a while. It is compatible with common accessories. So if I open up the side over here, it's got that standard 2-prong, I think it's an F connector. I can't remember, where you can plug it in. It's like a Kenwood I keep hitting the button. It's got that Kenwood connector, I think it's called, F connector, something like that. And you can plug in your headset, your earpiece, shoulder microphone, everything that a Baofeng uses for the most part. It's kind of like that same Baofeng connector. Now we talked about offsite ministry, right? One radio is at your church. The other radio is 400 miles away at your camp. Remember Camp Mystic, where the flood came through. Can you imagine you're trying to get a hold of everybody and you can see that that's happening? You can call people immediately and go, I heard you had a flood. What's your status? And then start getting help and finding out. You can certainly pick up a cell phone, but there's nothing like having this on you and start talking immediately. And also, like, one cell site might be down, but not all of them. Remember, this is multi-cell sites. And from my experience, that if a cell service goes down, it's one, not all, and it bounces across all of those. Let's talk about some things you should know before you buy one, okay? Because the cell side is digital, the audio can sound slightly compressed at times. Now, if two people talk over each other, part of that transmission might drop. So it's not a mechanical failure, it's how the digital system behaves. So your team's gonna need to practice radio discipline. When one person talks, the next person has to wait. And that's what you should be doing anyways, but like, just, you guys forget. So the radio forces you for that bit, which is not always a bad thing in organized communication. We talked about the case. It's not built like a Motorola. So if you intentionally like drop or, just careless, you could have a problem. but their customer service, I think, is pretty good. And I think you'll be able to get that replaced pretty easily. Rural users, right? Cell side shines in cities and towns. In very rural areas, the experience has been mixed. Now, I did talk to somebody in Idaho that was in a very rural area. They were 2.5 hours away from me, and I heard them just fine. They did not pick up everything I was saying, but then they went to their app and they were able to find the app captured everything. You're still going to need training and clear procedures, right? So no radio system is going to fix communication habits on its own. Teams need to practice short, clear transmissions and follow consistent terminology. The Ultra-1 works well when operators use it properly. It is not a substitute for training, and it should be integrated into your overall security plan. Now, something to think about with purchasing. They have a Black Friday deal. And this is huge. They come in packs of 2, 4, 6, something like that. But this takes a SIM card. And so normally you would have to pay $50 every year for that SIM card to work. Like when you buy radios like this, when you buy it, the first year is free. Well, really, it's rolled into this, I'm sure. But every year you'd have to pay $50 to keep this radio going. They have a Black Friday deal. If you buy the Ultra-1, that you get that cell service for free for life. I don't know how they're doing it. That's a pretty big deal, right? When you think about the cost, I'm saving $50 a year forever. And when you think about your church and limited funds, or maybe your church can't afford it, so you're going to have to buy it. So you buy a pack of 2, you're a 2-man security team, right? So you buy a pack of 2, I pay half the price, you pay half the price, and now I've got this for lifetime and not pay the $50 a year. Man, that's pretty spectacular. I'm not going to lie. That was a big deal for me. I'm praying that the radios they gave me are part of that deal. I don't know if it is or not. I hope so. That's pretty phenomenal, man. Just to be clear, where this shines, where you have cell coverage and not where in a place where all cell phones don't work. And it'll work pretty much everywhere, it seems like. Now, I would say to test it before you buy a whole bunch, but man, that Black Friday deal is pretty cool. And I don't know if you're going to get them in time to order more if it does work for you, but I can't make guarantees for you. But if you're in a place that at least one carrier comes through, no problem, you should be good to go. But if you're in a black hole for all cell phone areas, which those places are limited lately, then it's probably not going to work best for you. But for a majority of America, this is going to work really well. I like talking about the Bible and everything we do, right? And who would have thought there's some stuff in the Bible about communication? Actually, there's a lot in the Bible. So here I want to turn to 1 Corinthians 14, right? Now, church security isn't about responding to threats. It's about supporting the congregation so that people can worship without distraction. And communication plays a major role in that. So Scripture often connects clarity with order and confusion with danger. And again, for that, one passage that speaks directly to the importance of clear signals is found in 1 Corinthians 14. Paul writes that if a trumpet gives an uncertain sound, who will prepare for battle? Now, his point is simple. If the signal is unclear, people can't respond the way that they should. The same principle applies to a security team. When messages are clear, the team moves with unity and confidence. When messages are garbled or delayed, confusion grows and response slows down. Now, good communication is a form of stewardship. It helps protect the congregation, supports the mission of the church, and strengthens teamwork. Tools like radios don't replace faith or discernment. They support the responsibilities God has given us to watch over his people. When your team communicates clearly, you allow the congregation to focus on Christ without unnecessary disruption or fear. I like the Ultra-1. I think it's good for most teams. My concerns, I'm worried about the fragility of it. I'm worried about like if you guys are going to step on each other and start talking all at the same time, there might be a problem. But there's always a problem when you guys do that. I think for everyday stuff, this works really well. Remember, I used it during active shooter training when things are getting wild, and it worked just fine in a cinderblock building with gunfire going on. I was able to talk from Indiana to Idaho. I was able to talk from Nova Scotia, Canada to Idaho. That's pretty cool. The group thing, to make groups and talk to people in mutual aid groups that we set up. So for my Idaho people in the Treasure Valley, I'm really thinking that we should have a group chat, and I'll help set that up and we'll administer it and we'll get that going. So if you're in the Treasure Valley, we'll figure it out. We'll make that happen. And I recommend you do the same thing. Remember the Black Friday deal. It ends soon. I mean, like in a couple weeks. You don't have much time. I'm sorry this was delayed. It was because I was testing the crap out of it. And I wanted to make sure before I said anything to you that it was going to work. I want you to pray for clear communication amongst our church security teams. I want you to pray that we're able to overcome the evil that is constantly trying to pervade our church in this broken and dying world. And most importantly, I want you to remember, not most importantly, second most importantly, first most importantly is praying. Second most importantly is I want you to remember your ABCs, always be caring.